Row Home Productions.
If you do one thing successfully, it doesn't mean the next thing is going to work.
Right.
You know, and it's like many people assume, well, now it's going to be easy. It doesn't get easier, you know, especially if you're doing stuff that's pushing things a bit. Yeah, that's not just like, you're not just giving people like the obvious thing.
Exactly.
It's harder. Yeah.
This is the Art Power Podcast. I'm Janera Solomon. On this episode, I'm talking with Brandon Stosuy. Brandon is a writer, editor, curator, and producer. He's founder of The Creative Independent, an incredible resource for working artists and creatives, with more than 1,500 interviews published to date. He's also the head of editorial strategy at Kickstarter. Brandon is a connector across many disciplines: visual art, music, writing, installation, and more. In the midst of all that, he's an incredibly prolific writer in his own right. We spoke live at NADA New York Art Fair this past May. We're gonna have some conversation. I have prepped questions, but I'll probably go off script, as I tend to do as a poet. And we'll talk for a little bit, and we hope you'll have some questions too. The Art Power Podcast is about creating a space for artists to talk openly about their relationship to money. And as artists and makers, producers, we have ideas. And those ideas need money. And we think those ideas deserve money. So pretending like, oh, I'm just an artist and I don't have to think about cash. You know, the money's just gonna come to me. Maybe some people can do that. But Brandon, I don't think you've been one of those people.
No, not at all. Yeah.
And I haven't either. So that's what we're here to talk about. Let's give a warm welcome to Brandon Stosuy. So Brandon, where should we start? Tell us a little bit about your work as an artist and a writer.
Sure. When you're talking about needing resources to make things, like, I grew up in the Pine Barrens of southern New Jersey, town with a population of 831.
Oh, wow.
Farming town. And my parents had grown up, my dad grew up in East New York and my mom grew up in Queens. And so I would have access to the city through like visiting grandparents and stuff, but largely in this little town in a very like firmly working class household. And so when I wanted to make stuff, I had to find money. So, you know, I got my first job when I was 13, like worked on a farm, picking blueberries, where you're paid by the pound, not by the hour. So you can't just go out there and slack. You have to pick stuff. Yeah. And my first thing I ever made was a zine. And I think like that was something you could do cheap, you know, for not a lot of money. I met this woman named Bonnie who was old. I was like, you know, I was 13. She worked at a university or at a college, and she would photocopy stuff at night under the table. And so I got a very cheap deal to get these made, and I was too young to drive. So my mom would drive me to like a mall parking lot where this woman would hand me the zines and I'd give her the money. And so like figuring out and that was funded through like working on the farm. And so that just kind of kept expanding. This is when Tower Records still existed. Oh, wow. And they picked up the zines for distribution, and then it got like a feature in alternative press and became like a thing, and it kept growing. And so then I when that happened, I was not making money from it. And because I was a bad business person as a teenager, I would also sell it for like what it cost me to mail it. So I was just like losing a little money basically on them. Yeah. But it got sort of opened up opportunities to do other things and to kind of write for other people. And when I was in a band, I've never been a good musician, but I've always been in that world somehow.
What instrument did you play?
Rhythm guitar, which is the thing that the person that can't do much normally does. And so I played rhythm guitar, and then so we went on tour and we were able to book it just based on all these people I met through doing the zine. Yeah. So it really opened up my world from being in this small, very conservative town with not a lot happening.
I want to ask you something about that, of just the story you're telling. There are a couple of things that stand out. The thing I want to zero in on, though, is often I hear, you know, when I tell people that my family, we're immigrant family, we came to the U.S., and
I tell them my story of being an artist and exploring different things, they'll say things like, well, how did your parents do that? A lot of the story is immigrant families come and they want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. There's no room for art. There are all these sayings in our popular culture about how poor people can't make art, poor people don't have access to art, poor people don't have the privilege to think about art. Working class people don't know about art, aren't open to it. So these are refrains that are said over and over and over again. And when I hear your story, I'm hearing, well, yes and no.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm. I think too, my dad, he Russian immigrant and family working in factories in East New York, grandmother worked in a public school lunchroom and that kind of thing. But so I think because what I was doing was so removed from what he knew, he was just like, yeah, sure, just do this thing. And it seemed interesting to him. Because it was so new to him, he didn't think I'd make a career out of it. Like when I said, I want to be a writer, he was sort of, yeah.
Yeah, what was that like when you said that?
Well, he didn't see how it could actually work, And I mean, I honestly didn't see how it could actually work either because it doesn't often work. And I think a lot of it was through luck of just things happening when they happened. And I think I was one of the people in the early days of Pitchfork. And when Pitchfork, the music website, really took off and became my full-time job, that was not expected. I think it was a thing that happened and we saw it happening oh wow, now we have jobs, we have healthcare, all that kind of thing. But it was started, we were initially getting $10 a review and we all had multiple jobs while we were doing it, doing other things. And then just the timing of that worked. So yeah, I think when I said I wanted to be a writer, I didn't think it would work either. And when I finished college, I moved to Canada for a bit and I worked at a gas station. I was just doing all these jobs, working construction, this and that. Then I got a job at an art gallery as the assistant to the preparator. So I was helping install work and it just kind of kept going from that. Yeah, I think that's the thing is to me, I didn't realize it was going to work until deep into maybe I was 29 or so. After pushing it for a long time, then I was maybe this actually could work. But even then it was precarious and then it kind of just grew from that.
Well, I think that one of the things we think about and talk about at Art Power is what does it mean to work, right? What does it mean for your life as an artist to work? Some people think there's again this idea that my life as an artist means I don't have to think about money. I don't have to do anything else other than be in my studio making art. And that has never ever been true in life for any of the artists that we know in any museum collection or anywhere. But it's still a very popular myth. So for us at Art Power, we talk a lot about making it work. First of all, there are lots of definitions to that. And second of all kinds of work is involved in making it work. So you're multiple jobs at a time.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Yeah. I think too, the thing I do now is called The Creative Independent, and it's a daily publication with interviews about process. And I treat it very much like I did my zine when I was a kid. I do the social media, I create the little assets using Canva. I'm not a designer, but all right, I can do this. Just sort of add colors. Yeah. I'm editing it, I'm posting it. It's so hands-on, and I enjoy that. But I think it's very much born of that earlier stuff. But yeah, I think a lot of people we talk to on the site, or people see them as oh, this is a highly visible artist. They must be, rolling in it or something. And a lot of I think why that people have enjoyed the conversations because people are very honest. No, this is I went on tour and I lost money or something, or now this is my other job I have, or you see someone doing something you can't imagine. Well, why are they doing it then if they're not getting money from it? And I think that's another thing is artists who have a day job and make nothing from their work, but they keep going because they have a need to keep making the work, for whatever reason.
I was a musician also, so I paid my way through college playing music. I played in a band. We did all kinds of gigs, from bat mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs to clubs and festivals. We did them all, and that's how I paid tuition. I was a writer, I danced. I did all kinds of different things. I owned an art gallery for a little bit. For me, I never thought the money it would make or might make was a last thought. Again, looking back on it, I remember having friends who would say, well, why are you doing all this? I did it because A, it felt good to do, and B, it felt meaningful. And I just figured I had this idea, and tell me if you had this idea, that eventually if I'm doing all the right things, I would be able to figure it out.
Yeah, I think so. And I think same thing with me. I like doing it. I like the community, and I like the feeling of getting something done and just getting it out there. Like to me, like picking up that box of zines, or like later on doing these like bigger projects, and it felt like to me like it all just connected. Like it all was always kind of the same. Like when I was an adult, and then I was like, at Pitchfork, and we were like doing a project with the new museum or like the horse show or whatever, it still felt like me doing the thing when I was 17. It was like I was trying to carry that same ethos through, and also, because I never went to art school. Like when I went to school for English. I mean, like I just like read books basically, so it was that and journalism. And then I very quickly realized I did not want to be a professional journalist in the sense of like a newspaper writer or something. And I went to grad school, but I studied writing. Like I studied Samuel Delany and Dennis Cooper, so it was like different zone entirely, but I feel like I would just learn something for one thing and then try to, how do I apply that to the next thing? But I always like to connect. Like I always feel like I've been a connector. Like I liked introducing people to each other, or like collaborating with people, like finding new people to work with. I think that really goes back to that early kind of ethos of like having like living off a dirt road in the middle of the woods where there's just nobody around, where your biggest excitement as a kid is like checking the mail. I was like, all right, so we need to now like, find people to work with. How do we do this? And so that's always, for me, like, I think that's a big part of what I enjoy doing, is just finding other people to kind of try something out.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about your writing?
Mm-hmm.
Because writing for me feels very personal practice. Alone by myself. I mean, I like to go to writing conferences, retreats and such, but essentially when I sit down to like conceive of a thing, it's me and the thing. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your writing practice. Brandon is one of the most prolific producers of writing I know. So I'm really curious what that practice is like.
Yeah, I wake up early. But it is a thing where I do like squeezing it between other stuff. Like I think that for me is useful, is to not have unlimited time. And so like if I'm working on a book or something, I'll get up a little bit early. I have 2 kids, like a kid in high school and one in middle school. And so at this point, they're old enough to kind of get themselves mostly out the door. They need a little bit of but I can get up and kind of work before they wake up and that kind of thing. So I think having compressed time, I think I use the time, I do it every day. And if I have one day where nothing's happening, I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll just do it tomorrow. And so it's like that consistency that helps me out. I think because some days you have things and some days you don't. So I think as I've gone on, if I just do a little bit a day, it just slowly add a little more, go back, cut some stuff, that kind of thing.
Tell us about the last book that you published.
The one about crying? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was, so I wrote a book about crying, like the act of crying, and often crying in public. And it started because I run a lot, and I think jogging actually helps me with all this stuff too, because it just kind of is like a reset. But I would jog past someone once and they were crying while they were jogging, and I was like, huh. And so then I realized I do that sometimes, because you'll be listening to something, you'll be thinking about something. Then once you notice it, it's hard to stop noticing. So I started seeing people all over the place in New York, like, oh, this person's in a restaurant by themselves, crying, or this or that. So I just started documenting it. And I don't use Twitter anymore, but when I did use Twitter, I would just tweet out, saw a guy crying while eating a corn muffin, or something like that, things I would see, or person crying in a museum or whatever. And then someone said, you should do a poetry chapbook about this. These are kind of poems or something. Just started gathering them. And then I sent one to my friend Matt, he's in a band called The National that's sort of become a big band. Okay. And he misunderstood. I basically was check this out. Then he wrote something about crying and sent it back to me. And so he's like, oh yeah, would you want to put this in your book? I was like, oh, wait a second. This is not what I was expecting, but that's cool. So then I was like, oh, we have an essay now, basically, a short essay. So then I just started asking people to write me about a time they cried, and it just kept going. And so then the final book has, I think, 125 stories of people crying. Yeah, and it's people from all over the place. Initially, the first 2 were Matt and then the musician Phoebe Bridgers, and I realized, we now have 2 musicians. We need to expand. So I started asking a therapist, a psychoanalyst, this and that. And then I, again, went to Twitter and opened up my DMs and was just basically, hey, if you have a job or anything that puts you in contact with crying, please send me your information and maybe we can include it in this book. Wow. So we got a funeral parlor worker, a woman who's a zookeeper, and about how the animals who die at the zoo, someone who works at a vintage store, and about people selling their recently bringing in their recently deceased partners close. So it became like a much more like a much broader and richer book from that, I think. But so many people and so many teachers, like tons of teachers. So I had to kind of whittle it down, like which teacher has the most interesting story. But yeah, and so when we started doing these events where we would have people from the book read, then open it up to the audience, and people would come up and tell their stories, and it became these, like people were crying at these events where, whoa. So we did a bunch of them. We did one in Buffalo. Wow. We did one like in Seattle and a few in New York. But yeah, it was amazing. And some people that just like Gia Tolentino contributed to it. She basically says like she never cried until she was pregnant. So everything is about like crying during pregnancy. So people, it's like different. She's like, yeah, I've never cried at all. And that's something I'm crying all the time.
I know, crying all the time.
Yeah. So it's cool. And I think it was people, and they could be long or short. People could write something longer or just like contribute whatever they wanted. But yeah, it felt really, and the events especially felt really personal. And my friend Rose that I did the book with, Rose Lazar, she illustrated every single story. And she started making zines, like limited edition zines for each event. So we would reach out to people in that area and say, can you contribute stories about crying? Wow. So we had one in Seattle from a bunch of students. The one we did in Manhattan, we had the people that were in the book wrote something, that were at the reading wrote something new for the book. Yeah, I think that book it seemed to really resonate with people.
So I'm curious about that, the process as you're talking about it, because I'm hearing two things. One is that in the beginning, you had the idea, you weren't sure exactly where it would go, and other people helped you shape that idea. So saying yes to that. And then the second, which I want you to talk a little bit about, and then we're going to switch gears to dig into money a little bit more. In terms of the collaborations, like all the stories you're telling, Brandon, have so many people who are saying yes with you and saying, okay, and let's do this together, let's do that together. Can you talk a little bit about collaboration for you and how do you think about it? How do you keep those relationships rich and meaningful?
Yeah, for me, I just feel like it's a way to keep learning things. I remember we had this interview with Maggie Nelson on the site where she was like, you don't want to become like a broken record of your ideas. So I always keep that in mind. I'm like, I don't want to like repeat myself. And then just, to me, I want it to stay fun. And I think collaboration keeps it fun. It's like an interesting challenge because people work in different ways. And not all collaborations work. Sometimes you start and you're like, oh, we work in really different ways.
That's what I was going to ask, because it sounds really nice and rosy.
Yeah.
When you're like, oh, we're vibing, let's work together. But then what about when it's like, this isn't working? How do you work through that?
I think either you can pivot and find a way to make it work, or just be like, well, maybe this thing isn't gonna come together.
Do you say that first, or you let the other person say it first?
I let the other person. I feel like sometimes you just kind of know, but I think at this point the percentage of those that work is pretty high, and sometimes maybe it doesn't work right away, but then you come back to it later on and it works. And I've had some that haven't worked, not because we're not working, everyone just gets too busy. Like we'll be like, oh, let's do this thing, and then everyone's excited, and then it just like, and then it doesn't happen. One of my longest collaborative partnerships is with, and this involves money actually, is like with the artist Matthew Barney, and we've done stuff for like 15 years. Yeah. But it was always hard for us to figure out, they're always free events. We're like, well, how do we do this in a way that we're not just losing tons of money doing these things? So like, it was often like forcing us to get really tricky with how we would like build something, or like we would have friends just chipping in their time. And then recently we did one with Raven Chacon and Brian Junge and some other artists, and we suddenly realized that we just didn't have the money to pay for it, because it just felt like, we have children, like this is like strange for us to just put money into this weird thing. So we came up with a system where we reached out to like a bunch of different organizations that we'd worked with in the past, and we asked each one for like a small amount of money.
Like $100?
Well, I guess it was not that small, 1,000.
Okay. No, 1,000 is, small is relative.
Compare it to like how much like an institution would normally give out. Yeah. And so then, because it wasn't a huge ask, they all said yes, and we got enough to do this, and we paid everyone, and it worked. So we were like, that seemed like less of an ask than like, hello, organization, give us like $10,000 or something. So we kind of divided it up, and that way everyone who participated got paid. We needed to buy like a player piano for this, so we found one online. It was like we sort of did it, and we're like, all right, going forward, this could be a system for us to do, and so we're not just putting in our own money and like,
Even when you're putting in your own money though, before you get other people to say yes, generally you have to put some of your own money before you get other people to say yes. In those collaborations, when have you brought the money up? Like, is it in, like for me, I tend to just talk about the money right in the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't want any confusion. I'm generally like, this is the budget. This is what we can do right from the start. And folks can say yes or no. For you, it sounds like with your collaborators, especially since, I mean, Brandon, the way I've seen you work as a collaborator, it's like open, there's a lot of warmth, there's a lot of like grace. And so in that way of moving, when does the money come up for you?
Right.
Like who's gonna pay for this or that?
Right. I think it depends on the collaboration, but I think I've gotten better at that over time, because I know in the past, I would sort of just be like, oh, we'll just make this happen. And then there's a point where I'm like, oh God, like what have I done? You know, where there was a time where I was doing these shows, and if we didn't have enough money to pay the band, I'd go to the bank and take out some money and like just be like, here you go, you know? Then you're like, and it's not like your bank is like jammed, you know, you're like, oh God. This is before I had kids too, so I could be a little more like carefree, I guess. But yeah, I think I've gotten better about, like, hey, this is what we need, let's have a budget. That's what we did with this last event we did, where we figured out what we needed to do. We had this initial idea of like building an ice skating rink in this space. And then when we investigated it, we're like, this is way too expensive, we can't do it. So I think those kinds of just sort of like figuring it out enough that you know what you need to actually make it work and how to not cut corners. Because I'm always fine with cutting corners to a degree, but it's like, how many things do we cut before it just loses the entire vision, you know? Yeah, like the vision's gone. Yeah, and then with the Creative Independent, like the second that someone reaches out, like this is what we pay freelancers, this is what we do that. So everyone is very, you know, aware of the money involved in that, and you know what, or the lack of money involved. It's certain things like, you know, we're doing this event, we don't have a ton, but here's what we have to pay or whatever, you know. So just
You talk about getting better with it. I definitely feel like one of the advantages of growing older is that you get better at things. And I feel like I've also gotten better. I think too, you know, once I had a daughter, there was like more reality around time and risk and money. Not that I didn't take risks, I still take them. But just more awareness. And you've said a couple of times that, you know, having kids, having a family has shaped things. So can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I think the first thing was time. Like when the kids were born, suddenly my time completely shifted. And my wife Jane and I were like, wow, we didn't realize how much time we had before. Now we're like, wow, like things really changed. And we're like, wow, we could have done anything. We could have like built our own museum back then. So now we realize, all right, we have way less time. And then as they get older, they just have things they want to do. And like my one kid is, you know, an ice hockey goalie, and that's expensive. And it's sort of like the amount of pads, and he's always growing, and we're traveling all over the place. So like there's lack of time for that. The amount of money, we could be sending him to college for like what hockey costs basically. And so then you start thinking, well, we need to do this thing that, can I justify this thing? Right. Like with the time I have and what this is going to pay. Like I had someone call me yesterday and ask me to go to Atlanta to do something. It was really last minute. I asked what it paid and stuff, and I was like, yeah, I can't do it. Where I feel like if I was 23 and someone asked me that, I'd be like, yeah, sure. I'm going, you know? So I think like those kinds of things, when I was first starting out, I wrote for zines for free and stuff, which like, yeah, this is great. This is so fun. I get to like get my name in the thing. Yeah, you reach a point, we're also starting to think about in the future of college, like actual college tuition and all that kind of stuff, you know, if they opt to do that. But I think you can still experiment, and I still do some things now and then where I'm definitely like, this was just like a fun thing to do, or like, especially if it's like students and stuff, like I went and did a talk at Hunter recently, and that was really fun and satisfying. And it's not like Hunter's like rolling out the big bucks, but it was fun to do, you know, and I felt like I brought zines for them and gave them stuff. And I think that's important to me, is now that I can be like a mentor or like an elder statesman or something. You can sort of like,
elder state.
Yeah, you can like talk to these people who are coming up and be like, oh, like here's how you do this thing. And I remember like even at that, some kid, he was like, well, how would I put on like a festival like this or that? And I was like, well, you're in school. I was like, you should hit up the school for money. Like there's basically, there's like things where you are now that you could do that. And
exactly.
Just kind of little like, giving information.
When you were talking about, you know, the opportunities, this is one of the things we talk a lot about too internally, and I've talked a lot about as a producer with artists. It's like, what is an opportunity? And there are many times where you get an offer, like, oh, this sounds good, let's do it. One of my mentors way back in the day said to me, Janera, anything you're gonna do, before you do it, do the math. And at the time, I didn't really know what she was talking about, but now it's become a kind of mantra, which is like, not only do the math of the money, That's one math, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's the math, you talked about time. There's the math of energy, like are you gonna feel good at the end of it or not? And then there's the math of the relationships, like is it worth that last minute opportunity, is that worth some disruption to your family and any relationship that's happening there? And so I think doing that math all the way around is an important practice and something that I think a lot about. I'm curious for you, are there certain money lessons or ideas about money that you inherited or that you still carry with you, either from your parents or family or mentors, friends?
Yeah, I'd say like my dad is like, I say it in a loving way, but like one of the cheapest people in the world. And like he'll stand there in the grocery store, like looking at the two detergents weighing, like sort of figuring out, well, this is like 1 penny more for that. Yeah, he's very like, I'm all right. But so I think like I learned to be frugal and like to get, my brother's the same way. Like will like sort of figure out the cheapest way to get somewhere and stuff. And so I appreciate it. So I came up with that for sure. Like definitely not like, I'm not one just to throw around money, but I think it also made me realize early on that I was actually like undervaluing my time a bit, where I was getting paid probably not as much as I should have for certain things, because I'm just sort of like, didn't have a barometer necessarily. So like, then you're like, oh, wait a second, you can actually push back on this or like ask for more or something. So that was a lesson. But yeah, I think I've learned like with the Creative Independent, it's existed for 10 years. We've never been over budget. You know what I mean? So I'm very much just like, follow the budget. We don't have the money for this. We're not going to do it. Like that kind of thing.
Which takes a lot of discipline, actually.
Yeah, and certain things I'll say, we'll push this to the next month or something. Sometimes you have to get a little creative, like, oh, we'll do like half here and half that or something. But yeah, I feel like too, the idea of like debt stresses me out. The idea of like just having an unbalanced budget stresses me out. Like all those kinds of things I just don't want to deal with. And yeah, like I paid off my student loans as fast as I could, like that kind of thing. It's just like I don't want to have this hanging over me.
No.
Yeah, like that kind of stuff. Even if it was like a little bit more than I could pull off, I'm like, just like get this out of here. Like credit cards, all that stuff is stressful to me. So I think by nature, having grown up without a lot of money, then you're just like, all right, here's how we're going to make this work. And so I've never been like super extravagant about projects either. Like we can make them seem, we've done things where we've like projected huge things on like museums and stuff like that, but we've always done it within like the budget that we have and what we're given.
It's an interesting balance though, this idea of like working within the resources that you have, maximizing them, and then also making a big idea happen, like and sticking to a vision. So that's kind of, for the people who are listening, the listening audience, I'm doing this motion with my hands where like a balance. It is an important thing to learn, calibration, I guess, to learn how to do.
Yeah.
Because I hate it when folks are like, we don't have any money, so we can't even imagine anything. It's like, okay, well, why are we here? Like,
right, yeah.
Imagining is the whole point. And then on the other side, dream, 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 dream. No money, broke, 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 broke.
Yeah.
That's not gonna work either, right?
Yeah, I think part of like just my upbringing also impacted my aesthetics. I think that's helped me in a way. Is like my aesthetics has never been like, I'm gonna go do this thing with like Balenciaga or something. It's like a different thing. So I think I've lucked out where that's just kind of what I'm drawn to now too. So.
Right. I think that's one of the lessons, when I think about lessons from my parents around money, they're not particularly frugal, but they're mindful. It's like, we didn't have money when we came to the United States, but the money we had, we're gonna spend it on good food because food matters in this household. You're gonna go to Payless and buy one, get one at the Payless shoe store. I don't know if anybody still remembers Payless, but that was a thing.
Yeah.
You won't be wearing the latest Nike or whatever it is your friends are wearing, but that bread you're eating is gonna be really nice bread, and that meat is gonna be organic and fresh from a farm.
Right.
So there was always meaning around how the money was being spent, which I think I've definitely still carried forward. And another idea too, I'm really grateful to them. My father is an artist. My mother was a nurse's aide. She still works now, not as an aide, but something else, at 76 because she loves to work. And he still works because he loves his work. And I think the other thing I learned from them is, life is worth doing, right? So it's like, whatever it is you want to do it.
Right.
Why spend your life doing things you don't want to do? Anytime I would ask them for advice on anything, they would say, well, Janera, what do you want to do? And so that, I took that for granted growing up. And when I went to college, I met other people and learned that not everybody got that lesson.
Right. Yeah.
I got the whatever you want to do that. Do it really well, be one of the best at it, for sure, but love it and do it really well. And I think that's what I love about being artists.
Yeah. That's one thing we tell our kids. Like my wife's an architect, runs her own firm, and we always tell the kids, like, we're lucky we have jobs we like, but it took a lot of effort to get those jobs. So that's like imparting this idea of like, you're not just going to roll into having this thing, like you sort of have to work at it. But you're lucky to. Like Sunday nights, I'm not like laying in bed like, oh no, I got to go work this thing I hate tomorrow. Like, yeah, it's nice not to have that, you know. So I think, and to wake up and feel like energized, like, oh cool, I get to try to do some stuff today that's interesting to me. And not always, you know, like, you know, there's going to be the meeting where you're like, oh God, not that. Those things all happen, but generally speaking, like I enjoy doing what I'm doing. But yeah, same, like our kids are like, do the things you want to do, but like don't just expect it's going to just happen.
No,
you know, you got to invest some time and energy into it.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. We should take some questions from our beautiful studio audience here. Don't be shy.
So it was really cool to think about your zines, and you put that flyer up on the web, and people responded to it. Mm-hmm. Do you still have those? And how did you find that was the format that you wanted to start kind of thinking about and expressing yourself and doing that initial work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still have them because my mom had the foresight to like keep copies of them, and so I still have them.
The archivist.
Yeah. So I do have them, and I think it was just like the easiest way to do something for me because you could. I had like a word processor. It was like even like before a computer, you know. So like my word processor, and then I could print it out. My mom had a photocopier at her job. She was a social worker, so I'd go to her office and I could like sort of like, you know, do the glue stick thing and make collages, and then I would just copy them, and then. Because I knew this guy who had a zine in Philadelphia called No Longer a Fanzine, and he gave me the connection for this woman who did the cheap printing, so it was just easy, like a way for me to do it. Like I was literally making like 1,000 copies of like a 60-page zine for $100. It was like some ridiculous price, because she was just pocketing the money, so she's like, and she was doing tons of people's zines. So I think it was just because it was easy to do, and it was able to like, and I knew like Maximum Rock and Roll and Fact Sheet 5 and other places that could review it. And it was like a way to get my thoughts out into to the world beyond like my little town. So I think that was the appeal to me, because it was something I could do largely by myself, and I could just have to walk to the post office and mail them. And it was because where I grew up, there was not like a venue, or there was like not an art gallery. Like our town has a motorcycle shop and a hot dog stand, and that was basically it. And then just like cranberry farms and stuff. So there wasn't much around to. Yeah, it was easy to do it, and it was fun to do. And it kind of would fill my time. Like I'd get home from school and just work on the zines all the time.
There's a storytelling impulse there too, that's carried forward all the way till now.
Yeah, and I think I tried with those two just to be really honest in them. Like I wouldn't edit them much. I would just kind of write what I was thinking, and then just like, and some of them, you know, one would be like, my mom had been married a few times, and like I had some really interesting stepfathers, so it kind of would be me, like kind of like.
You were spilling the tea.
I was still, like sort of like, well, he finally did the dishes, like just things like that, you know, like, and kind of like getting it out there. And then I would just. My mom actually told me, like, you know, when she was divorcing one of my stepfathers, she used like the article in the zine as proof of like his like. She's like, look at this guy was terrible, kind of thing. So it was very much about like being a teenager growing up. You know, like that's what I was writing about.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
I guess, Brandon, you know, you've published hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews on the Creative Independent. Are there certain threads that emerge about living a creative life, like certain lessons or things that come back, or that you take as sort of like, this is some of the best advice and things about living a successful creative life, living as an artist?
Yeah, I feel like one thing that comes back is like you get inspiration when you're not expecting it. Like if you're just like doing something else. Like there's an interview with Eileen Miles where they say like inspiration will come, just make sure that you're ready to receive it, kind of thing. And I think like this sort of notion of like I'll sit at my desk and be inspired, people say that doesn't really happen for them, like they're doing something else. One thing I've noticed recently is a lot of people talk about weightlifting for some reason. Like that's a good thing recently, where multiple people in a row have been like, oh yeah, I go to the gym and that's how I get my ideas.
Oh,
that's cool. So there's like a health sort of thing. I think consistency, like a little bit every day. Like one of the first interviews I ever did for this site was with Philip Glass. And I think he's 88 now, but he was maybe like 81 at the time. And we did it at his house, and he was like, all right, you got to go. It's time for you to practice. So like that kind of idea of like even, he did it much nicer than I, he wasn't quite like that, but he was like, you got to go now. Yeah, it's because he had like a consistency where every day he did his thing. So I think that's something that's emerged is like, same thing like with going to the gym, like you'll get stronger if you go, a few times a week or whatever versus like once every 2 months. So I think that consistency, and I think consistency also allows it not to get overwhelming because then you're just doing a little bit at a time. Where if you save up, like this was, I think my mistake I would make when I was younger was I was like, I'm going to write a thing, and then I would get so in my head about it and so like psyched up, then you'd sit there and you're like, there's nothing there. Yeah. So I think like just keeping moving. Yeah. And I think you also, one thing I've learned is that everyone's process has to change over time. Like you could be doing one thing for a long time and then suddenly it doesn't work anymore and you got to kind of like figure out something else. And then also, if you do one thing successfully, it doesn't mean the next thing is going to work.
Right.
And it's like, many people assume, well, now it's going to be easy. It doesn't get easier,
No.
Especially if you're doing stuff that's
pushing
things a bit. Yeah, that's not just like, you're not just giving people like the obvious thing.
Exactly.
It's harder. Yeah.
And I think that's that's one of the, that's kind of one of the truths of living and sustaining an artistic life and a creative life is that the myth of like a linear path up, that's just straight, success to success to success, funding to funding to funding, partner to, like all of that's mythology. And that the reality, which I think is good, is that if you're trying new things and you're changing and you're open, if you carry all of that, then it's gonna feel, there are moments that are gonna feel like setbacks, or moments that are gonna feel harder than you think they should, and definitely moments where you'll feel like you're starting over, and it's because you are.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you, Brandon,
thanks for having me.
sharing
I appreciate
with
it.
us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Keep talking, keep listening. Find an artist friend.
The thing about Brandon that I love, he gets to work every day and makes me feel like it is all possible. Balancing work with family and raising kids, finding ways to just continue to make and produce and create. There's a consistency there that is incredibly inspiring. Brandon's work can be found at thecreativeindependent.com. He's also on Instagram at bstosuy, BSTOSUY. The Art Power podcast is produced by Rohome Productions and Art Power, a public benefit corporation working to bring artists sustainability, dignity, and freedom. The team includes producer Jackson Roche and managing producer Alex Lewis, with mixing and mastering by John Myers. Special thanks also to Cameron Herman, content and research lead at Art Power. If you're enjoying the Art Power podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. For information about Art Power, including our new financial platform for artists called Tortoise, please visit us at artpower.io. Thank you for listening.
Rohome Productions.